Okay, welcome to episode 19 of the PI Filmmaker podcast. So today I'm going to keep it pretty rough, pretty raw. I've got a bunch of notes for what I'm going to talk about. And it starts with how I've structured this. Basically, earlier this week, someone sent me like a video meme, a comedy meme. And it was someone saying, stop stressing out, stop worrying, stop getting anxious. And I get the kind of purpose of that. I guess sometimes, like, if you've seen the kind of work that I make, it's very headspacey. It's people reflecting, thinking about things, possibly in their heads. But at what point does stop stressing, stop worrying become stop caring, stop questioning, stop challenging? Because it's easy to be apathetic. Apathy is very easy. And it also maintains systems. Filmmaking has always moved forward because people questioned the way things worked. Independent filmmaking exists because people refuse to wait for permission. The people who change things are usually the people willing to ask, does this actually make sense? And sometimes when you like that, it can lead to awkward situations in which you end up in possibly heated discussions with people or heated discussions with people you're working with. I mean, I'm not one for conflict really, but at the same time, I think it is important to speak up when you have concerns about something. So questioning something does not mean you hate it. You can love filmmaking, you can love festivals, you can support filmmakers, but you can still question how these systems operate. Criticism does not mean bitterness, but it often looks that way possibly to people because a lot of people have become apathetic. There's a lot of apathy in the world. People are on social media and it's easy to scroll past one thing which is a horrific story and have the same reaction to something that's quite positive. And a lot of people just want to get by and pay off their mortgage, and that's fine. But if you passionately care about something, the way I do about cinema, and I'm not saying other people don't feel the same way as I do. Obviously, there's lots of people who feel this way about cinema. But when you care about a subject, you challenge the systems, and I think it's the right thing to do because that's how things change. I think about things like higher education, which is on things like LinkedIn. I'm seeing a lot of articles about about how higher education is responding to AI, how it's responding to people's concerns about the fees. Lots of questions about class sizes, job redundancies, and it concerns me because if you're teaching a subject like filmmaking, for instance, I think you have a responsibility to make those students the best filmmakers they can possibly be, that they can have the teaching, the equipment, the understanding that they've paid for. And so you hear about things online on LinkedIn. Sorry, I'm just scrolling through my notes, so bear with me. Where you've got rumours of courses that are talking about increasing class sizes. Okay. Is that going to help people become better filmmakers? Say you're teaching them camera tech. You're teaching them how to shoot on the latest camera, and you've got 40, 50 in a classroom. Are all of those students really going to learn how to use that particular piece of kit? I don't think so. Increasing workloads you hear about for staff. I think most lecturers are already stretched to their limit. I don't think that's an answer. You hear about standardizing the amount of feedback that students get. So basically, they get a kind of generic, thank you, well done, you've submitted, think about this, this and this moving forward. Like, I think feedback should be tailored, it should be specific, it should be granular, you should be getting into the nitty gritty of what they did and how they can do it better moving forward. But these are the kind of conversations that institutions are having now. Like, okay, how do we save money and still take in the same amount of students, if not more? You hear about people talking about the amount of contact hours and teaching hours. Okay, we might have to reduce it. So basically less teaching, more students. Like, where does this go in terms of supporting the next generation of filmmakers. And you also hear about things like, let's reduce assessment. Let's reduce assessment so they do less, they get a grade, they think they've done it to a specific standard, but that's not the case at all. They've just happened to come onto a course at a period where there's a lot of kind of questions around HE. And meanwhile, you've got apps like ChatGPT, and you can ask ChatGPT, how do I colour grade for this, this, and this? Or how would I set up this, this, and this? And so I don't think anyone challenging any system is being negative. That's just not how I see it. Systems improve because people challenge them. If you accept a flawed system, then are you really going to look back in 50 years and say, yeah, I did everything I could to ensure that the world was a better place as a result of me doing my work, doing my job? And I think it's easy to be apathetic and say, well, that's just how things are. And I've met a lot of people like that in my time who are just kind of like, yeah, it is what it is. You've just got to deal with it. I remember once I was at a staff meeting and someone said, and me and this colleague, we got on quite well. And we used to teach together. And my colleague joked, he went, oh, it's like you can work with someone like Mark, who's very much from an independent filmmaking background, and he almost kind of sucks his teeth when I talk about industry. And we were laughing, but then someone else in the room went, well, that's just called being an adult, Mark. And I thought, who the fuck are you talking about? Who are you talking about? Talking to, like, I'm 40 years old. Like, I am an adult. Adult. But I think the guy was the guy who said Mark almost sucks his teeth was joking. He was making a wider point about being able to collaborate with people who have wildly different approaches to filmmaking, and we were making that point, and he was doing it through humor. But someone else in the room was like, how dare you even have a different opinion? Like, the industry is the industry. And I just thought, oh, get to fuck. But that's an aside. But independent filmmaking has always been about challenging systems. Every filmmaking movement has challenged an existing structure, whether that's independent cinema challenging the studio system, so the way Cassavetes in the 50s and 60s opened doors so that people like Martin Scorsese saw that, oh wow, there really is no excuse. Like, if I want to, I can make a film. It's going to be fucking tough, but I can do this. I can go out, I can make something. Whether it's Dogma 95, the way those filmmakers in the 90s challenged sort of certain artificial ideas that were attached to cinema, whether that be genre tropes or the way lighting's done or the way post-production sound is done. The way digital filmmakers challenged super expensive barriers. Online creators now challenging traditional forms of distribution. You've got two filmmakers currently doing very well at the box office, but they started out on YouTube. Like, they found their own path. I mean, I guess a common theme is stop waiting for permission and don't accept that things just have to be the way they are. I remember when I first started thinking not first started thinking like this, maybe I've always been someone who's been a bit anti-establishment, but I remember there was on the Once Upon a Time in Mexico DVD, a film by Robert Rodriguez, and Robert Rodriguez made El Mariachi in the 90s for like £7,000, and he put himself through science medical testing to get the money together, and then he went and shot this film on celluloid. And in the early 2000s, he made one of the sequels, Once Upon a Time in America. And on the DVD, he was talking about the fact that it was a feature that had been shot completely on digital. And he said, people are often scared of change, and you've got to kind of be someone who's willing to be open to that change. And the thing he said was, I think of this story, so I'm with, I forget the exact, let's just say him and his partner are making dinner for everyone, and they're cooking a piece of ham, and the partner starts cutting off the edges. Excuse me, I've got a cough today. They cut the edges off the ham, put it in the oven, and he says, wow, that's interesting, why'd you cut the edges off? And he goes, And she goes, I don't know. I think it was something I just saw my mum used to do, and so I just carried on doing it. So they go to the mum and they say, "Hey, mum, why'd you cut the edges off the ham?" And she goes, "Oh, I don't know. It was something my mum used to do." So they go to the grandma. They go, "Grandma, why do you cut the edges off the piece of ham?" And she goes, "Oh, it was just the only way I could get it into the oven we had back then." And he's making a point about sometimes things just become these things start happening just because people are used to doing it that way. And so, excuse me, I'm having a rough time today. It's about understanding that you can accept different ways of doing things. And so this idea of stop worrying, stop stressing, stop asking questions, I don't know if it's a helpful one sometimes. It's like I'm coming back to film festivals this week because they can be incredibly valuable. Sorry. You've got new voices, new communities. You can connect with filmmakers. Sometimes they celebrate independent cinema. But that doesn't mean that these platforms shouldn't be questioned. So if we think of a filmmaker's journey, so they write their film, they might have to fund it themselves, like that's been the case for me, it's been the case for a lot of filmmakers. They might have to organise the cast, the crew, find locations, solve problems. You've got to then go through all that finishing process, those niggly bits that like, oh, okay, there's a little mistake there that we need to account for. And then you pay for submissions, you send it off to festivals, you pay those prices, and then you wait to see if it has any value. So you've got people putting their own money into production. They might have borrowed their equipment, working with tiny crews, calling in favours, spending months, years finishing this project. And after all of that, they've got to pay even more money. There might be travel costs, which Darren Scott talked about on the episode he came on. You might even have to buy tickets. That's something Darren talked about. And then also, because you're sharing Instagram posts and things like that, you're actually promoting these festivals. So the festivals are getting free promotion that they can just retweet, repost. It's all good for them. So what festivals receive from filmmakers? Without filmmakers, there's no festival. So the films that are submitted provide their screenings, they provide their audiences, they provide their reputation, their awards prestige, industry attention, sponsorship value, cultural credibility. Like there's a lot that festivals, the festival side of things, are getting from filmmakers just bringing their work to them. And I saw something a couple of weeks ago, right? Sorry, I do apologise for the cough this week. I'm just going to have some tea, which kind of solves everything for someone from Britain. And I saw that a film festival, on their Instagram, they'd shared a story by the festival director. And the festival director had put out a video in which he's asking the community of that film festival, so the people who follow that account, to submit money via a Kickstarter page for them to direct their first short film. So this is going to be the first thing they've ever directed. I went and had a look at their IMDb, and apparently they have done a bit of producing before, and they've done some acting. But it seems like this particular film festival, I'm going to say which film festival it is, it's the Manchester Film Festival, which I'd already talked about in the film festival episode, because I think some of their practices are actually quite questionable in terms of the films that they're screening. I think it's absolutely about promoting the festival rather than the work itself. When you've got films being screened that are in the cinemas the very next day, I don't see the purpose of that, quite frankly. That is not a film festival. Like if you go to Cannes, you might see an aura, and an aura's not in the cinemas then for 6 months. You really are seeing something. You're getting the first chance to see it. That's not the case at the Manchester Film Festival. You'll get to see it in a couple of weeks. And this festival director is asking for £8,000 with a stretch goal of £12,000. Now, the issue for me is not about this person making films or crowdfunding or even the fact that they seem to be paying people. It's the dynamic. because independent filmmakers are supporting that festival. Okay, so the festival has a platform, but then that platform is being supported by indie filmmakers paying submission fees. Now, when James McAvoy screened his film California Scheming at this festival, I highly doubt that they paid a submission fee. And even if they did, I think it had way more opportunity of being screened than, say, if Mark Duggan shared his film, because the fact is they can stick James McAvoy on Instagram posts and say, "Oh, I'm super excited to have my film screened at the Manchester Film Festival." So it's a concern when the person controlling a platform is then asking that same community to fund their creative work. There's a power imbalance there, and it should be kept separate. If this person was making a film and not sharing it through their film festival account, I might feel differently about it. I mean, I'd still have a question about £8,000, because even though £8,000 is quite small in terms of filmmaking, I mean, I've spoken previously about even student filmmakers are spending 5-10 grand now on excuse me, I do apologise. We'll call this the coughing episode. Even filmmakers, student filmmakers are spending 5, maybe 10 grand on short films. I mean, when Will came on, he talked about how the BFI gave him, I think it was £5,000, and that still involved calling in favours to get that work made. But when many filmmakers have spent years like ploughing through, trying to get past those limitations, creative problem solving, and then someone who's never directed a film is asking for 8,000, it doesn't sit right with me. I think you should go through the process of actually going making something with friends and family, seeing what worked, seeing what didn't, then making another one, putting your own money into a project, like back yourself, because at the minute we've got a dynamic whereby someone's running a festival who'd only previously produced a couple of things. They're then directing a film festival that's funded entirely by the public, and then they're asking the public to also fund their filmmaking dreams. It doesn't sit right. And actually, I think you find, and what I found, if you look at someone like Robert Rodriguez, limitations actually help you become a better filmmaker. If you have 8 grand for your first film, having never directed a film, like I'm first of all, I'm like, what makes you think you know what to do with 8,000 as a director? Because on my first short film, I wouldn't have known what to do with £8,000. I mean, you might have a super strong team around you. Maybe that's it. And maybe then you are just working with the performers. I don't know. I still think it's a big ask, and I think it's an even bigger ask to ask the community built around a festival that, don't forget, has favoured celebrities over independent filmmakers. I don't think James McAvoy is going to be putting in any money towards this Kickstarter campaign. I don't think Kit Harington's going to be paying anything towards this campaign. It's going to end up being independent creatives. I think filmmakers have to go through that process of making something imperfect, seeing it fail, improving, making something better. That is how you learn how to be a filmmaker. So should your first film be attempted with thousands of pounds that you haven't actually had to put your hand in your own pocket for? I don't think so. So it's an interesting dynamic, and actually it really shocked me when I saw it, to be honest, because then there's other questions. It's like, okay, if you've got all these sponsors for this festival, is there no way that you can raise this money another way, through those sponsors, for instance? I mean, the campaign states the film is being made in association with the Manchester Film Festival, giving, title of the film, a real pathway from production to premiere and then international festival circuit. And here's where it gets really tricky, because what they're saying is, on that Kickstarter campaign, we've already got a platform for this to be played at. And as the Manchester Film Festival is a BIFA and BAFTA qualifying short film festival for short films, so it can then go on potentially to be nominated for a BAFTA for Best Short Film, you've got a filmmaker who can leapfrog hundreds of other filmmakers just because they control the means of exhibition and distribution. So if you've got someone then on the other side of the planet, they're in Australia, and say they meet the final deadline for submission for this festival, they pay, I don't know, $75 or whatever it is for that final submission, and they pay it, they think, okay, I've got a chance of getting into this festival. They don't know that actually one place at that festival is being taken up, guaranteed according to the Kickstarter campaign, by a film made by the director of the festival. Is that fair? Is that transparent? I think there's a complete imbalance there that's completely unfair to the filmmakers who are paying good money to have their work screened. And also, it's almost cheating in many ways. It's like, because then you can say you screened your film at a BAFTA qualifying film festival. Is that right? Because then if you can put those things on your Film Freeway account, other festivals then go, oh, it played at this BAFTA qualifying festival. Great, maybe we should take a look at it. Maybe we should play it at future festivals. And as a result, then you've got opportunity for further funding applications, career opportunities. You've got the Laurel. You've got all these things that suddenly other people have had to pay for, had to fight for through their $40 to $80 festival submission, and you're getting it for free because you control the platform. So there's definitely a conflict question there. I don't think they're submitting it through the normal processes by the sounds of it. When this thing's going to play, they've already said it's going to play. Will they have paid? I don't think so. I don't think there's any way they can say it was reviewed independently. I don't think there's any chance of it being rejected from the festival based on what they've said, that they do have a clear pathway to distribution. Is it then going to be eligible for awards? How's this going to work? It just seems all sorts of unfair, and it might sound like, oh, boo-hoo, but it is unfair because I sympathise with the filmmakers on the other side of the planet, the person in Australia who's saved up his $75, submitted to this festival, and he doesn't realise he's competing for a place at a film festival with the director of that film festival. If you knew there was something like that, you would never submit as a filmmaker. And I discovered this a number of months ago now. I saw a post by the Manchester Film Festival on Instagram saying they were looking for volunteer screeners, people to basically help select next year's films. So the post read as follows. Bear with me while I pause and cough and things like that. This is a monologue. I've got loads of bullet points, and then I'm just working through them and picking up my phone where need be. But keep with me, because I think the information's what's important. I was actually thinking, a little aside, I was actually thinking about this because I was thinking how when me and Miranda were talking about Miranda saying, I say and I think a lot and things like that, and it's like, I could go through and edit all of that stuff out, but then this job becomes a huge undertaking doing this weekly podcast. I think of podcasters like Blind Boy, for instance, and he says, you might hear an hour, but I've spent hours and hours, if not days, writing that, editing that, and so on. And so you don't want it to become like this huge undertaking, or at least I don't, because that's the kind of thing I was thinking when I started this, that it would remain kind of raw, relatively raw and unpolished. But here we go anyway. So the Manchester Film Festival said, we're looking for volunteer screeners. Applications are now open. Help us prepare for MFF 27 by reviewing films from the UK and around the world and gain hands-on experience developing a film festival programme. As a screener, you'll watch a weekly selection of shorts and features and work with the programming team to decide which ones should be shown on the big screen at MFF 27. Sounds great, right? They don't sound too confident there, do they? You don't need this is the bit that got me. You don't need any prior experience, just a passion for film and a few hours every week to spend watching creative and thought-provoking short films. Please note these are 8 volunteer positions available for this team. This opportunity is only open to people based in Greater Manchester. And I suspect that's the case because they don't want to be accused of exploiting people. So if you get on a bus from, I don't know, Cheetham Hill to the city centre, you've not got that much of an undertaking. Whereas if you're driving up from Birmingham, for instance, people might start saying that's a bit of a piss take. And also they might get some funding for that, because they'll say, well, we're engaging the community, we're helping people understand the process of judging film festivals and things like that. But anyway, no prior experience needed, just a passion for film. And it's like, well, a passion for film could be you like watching Marvel over and over again. I wouldn't call that a passion for film. Like, you might just be interested in a real small branch of cinema, and it might just be big budget Hollywood cinema. I mean, recently I've really been thinking, like, would someone like Bergman, for instance, what would Bergman do as a filmmaker operating now? Would any of these films, these classics that he made, get made? I don't know. But anyway, I was curious, so I went through to their volunteer application pack thing, and I screenshotted it. Welcome to the Manchester Film Festival. As a new film programmer, we want to make sure you have a clear understanding of our programming goals and what we look for when selecting films to screen at the festival. Our focus is on finding unique stories and high-quality filmmaking craft that will engage and entertain our audiences. Straight away, unique stories. Is California Scheming by James McAvoy a unique story? That was already a documentary. So, I don't know. Here are some key programming goals that we strive to achieve. 1. Diversity. We aim to showcase a diverse range of stories, perspectives, and voices from around the world. We're committed to programming films that represent a variety of cultures, backgrounds, and experiences. And I would say, especially if there's a large budget attached to that and potentially a celebrity. But I'm adding that bit in, so I've got to say that that's a joke. Legally, that is a joke. 2. Quality. We're dedicated to selecting films that exhibit exceptional filmmaking craft. We seek out films with strong direction, cinematography, writing, editing, and sound design, among other elements. Right, here's the thing. If you have no experience in selecting films, how do you know what strong direction, cinematography, writing, and editing looks like? Except for a subjective opinion based on what you've already seen. If you've never seen a Bresson film, a Bergman film, and you've only ever seen Hollywood blockbusters, how do you really have a varied understanding of what good direction looks like? That is so subjective that I actually find it almost laughable that a film festival has put that out. Unique perspectives. We're interested in films that offer a fresh take on familiar genres and themes. We look for stories that are original, thought-provoking, and memorable. Well, that's just completely subjective again, isn't it? Like, who's to say what's thought-provoking and memorable? And they'll say, well, we've got 8 of us, and then before there's a final selection process, the director of the festival has a look at them. And the director of the festival had produced like 2 short films before starting this festival. 4. Audience engagement. I think this is where they're really at. We want to program films that will captivate our audience and spark conversation. We strive to create an immersive festival experience that will leave a lasting impact on our viewers. Yeah, if you get to see a Q&A with James McAvoy, I'm sure that it will leave a lasting impression. Audience engagement is, I think, what is really happening at this festival. I'm not sure about the first few things, to be honest. I think if they can, because what's interesting is, I missed this bit out, there was a post recently in which the director of this festival was boasting of record-breaking ticket sales for the last film festival that they ran. So on the one hand, you've got record-breaking ticket sales, and then you're also saying, but we need money from filmmakers, Instagram followers, for us to make a film. Doesn't sit right, does it? Okay. Anyway, so to help us achieve these goals, we look for films that meet the following criteria. Strong storytelling. We're looking for films with compelling characters, well-crafted narratives, and effective pacing. We want to see films that take risks, challenge expectations, and leave an impression on viewers. I'm telling you, that James McAvoy film is not challenging anyone. 2. Technical excellence. We're interested in films with polished, professional grade production values. We look for films that demonstrate proficiency in areas such as cinematography, sound design, and editing. Now, that is interesting, right? Because this goes back to that old debate about what's important in cinema. Is it storytelling? Is it technical excellence? Is it vision? In an ideal world, you want all of these things coming together. But historically, You had independent films that weren't technically polished, but they told an engaging story. And if I look at films by Bergman, I've got some Bergman box sets on my shelf actually. Some of them films aren't technically perfect. They're not up to the standard of what Hollywood was producing at that period, and yet it's some of the best filmmaking still. If you look at a film like Persona, that's light years ahead of anything I'll see out of Hollywood this year. It really is. 3. Artistic vision. We want to see films that showcase the filmmaker's unique perspective and creative vision. We're interested in films that offer something new and fresh to the world of cinema. I mean, it's just this is just all word salad stuff, isn't it? It's just kind of buzzwords, vision, perspective. It's like, I'm not targeting James McAvoy. I really do like James McAvoy, but that film, I don't think offers anything new. It's the classic rags to riches story in which, okay, along the way we've told some porcupines, and at some point we're going to get found out for the lies we've told. And we'll learn that actually what's really important in life is having some integrity or something like that. I've not seen it, but I guarantee it'll go something along the lines of that. Audience appeal. While we value artistic merit, we also want to select films that will resonate with our audiences. We aim to program films that are accessible, engaging, and entertaining. So here we go. So we've got contemporary Bergman. He's submitted Persona, and the 8 people on the selection committee who have no prior experience look at this and they go, we don't know what the fuck to make of this. What is this? Meanwhile, we've got California Scheming. Well, this is kind of like stuff we recognise. I think this will have a better audience appeal. I think audiences will understand this. I think cinema shouldn't always be about giving people what they want. Like I'm not a huge fan of Oasis, but there's a Noel Gallagher interview. He's like, and he says, "Fuck the customer. The customer didn't want Jimi Hendrix, but they got it. They didn't want Sgt. Pepper's by the Beatles, but they got it." Like, he says the customer doesn't know what the fuck it wants, but it gets it, and it learns to kind of accept it and like it. The mind boggles with this. So, as a film programmer, your role is to help us identify films that meet these criteria and align with our programming goals. You'll be responsible for reviewing film submissions, providing feedback, and making recommendations to the festival's decision-making team. We appreciate your dedication to finding exceptional films that will contribute to the success of the Manchester Film Festival. We believe that by working together, we can create an unforgettable festival experience for our audiences and filmmakers alike. Okay. There we go. Interesting. So these volunteers, okay, I'm guessing they don't get paid to do this. So we've got a situation now in which filmmakers on the other side of the planet are paying £75 to submit a short film. We've got people viewing them who have no prior experience, and they're all right with that. No prior experience. So this could be, I don't know, someone who's 18 studying filmmaking at college for the first time, buzzes off Marvel cinema, doesn't know much about Bergman or Fellini. Not that that's the be-all, end-all. Viewing your film, they're working for free. So you've paid, but the people judging are working for free. You've got competition by the director of the festival who's never made a film but wants £8,000 off the public to go and have a crack at filmmaking. So there's just a question of transparency as far as I'm concerned. Like, filmmakers, like, you've spent years developing skills, you've spent thousands potentially making a film, months in post, you're paying that submission fee, and then it's potentially screened to someone who has very limited experience. It just doesn't sit right. So what exactly does that submission fee buy? Is it paying for the administration? It's not paying for expert evaluation, I don't think. So basically, you're paying for the opportunity to potentially have a laurel that you can say we qualified for a BIFA qualifying and BAFTA qualifying film festival. It's gatekeeping. People are paying because there's the kind of, they want that prestige of saying, okay, we got through this gate. I don't know. So here's the thing, right? So these screeners. So how do you judge strong direction without any directing experience or any formal understanding of film theory, for instance? Have you gone and done a film theory course? Have the people even above that? Like, okay, so the director of the festivals produced a couple of short films before running the festival. Now, obviously, now they'll have more experience because it's 10 years later and they've watched hundreds of films. But when they started out, what was their experience in understanding what strong direction looked like? Have they gone and studied the kind of the benchmarks for cinema, whether that be Hollywood and independent? I don't know. How do these people recognise intentional choices? How do they judge limitations that the filmmakers have had to work around? Are they saying that basically an expensive looking film is automatically better filmmaking? Because then you really do have a problem. Film is an art, and you can't say that something that's more expensive is better than something that's cheaper. That's not how art operates. And here's the thing, right? I've been thinking about this a lot recently, because in the past I've sometimes worked with people and they don't always have a true understanding of how difficult it is to get a feature over the line. When you've made films, you do understand locations falling through, actors dropping out, bad weather, sound problems, running out of time. And it changes how you judge others, because you realise, okay, have these people actually accounted for these things, or have they not thought about them at all? I don't know. But I do think in terms of what's happening at this festival, I think there's question marks, because I don't think the people judging have had those experiences, and now they want someone else to fund their opportunity to have a go at it. I think, as I keep saying, filmmaking is learnt through doing and failing on your own terms with friends and family first. When you had, historically, Hollywood, way back when, once upon a time, Hollywood studios, I do apologise, they made films, they distributed films, and they even owned cinemas. And it gave them control over the product and access to audiences. And as a result, there was a case in which it was decided that studios couldn't have such a monopoly over the industry, in which they were controlling every element from the production through to distribution. It was deemed unfair. And yet we now have a situation, slightly different of course, in which there's a filmmaker whose festival is propped up by submission fees. These submission fees from indie filmmakers who have a dream, that person is now asking those filmmakers, because they're the ones who are potentially seeing this, and those audience members who've been to that festival, to fund their filmmaking. On top of that, they're guaranteeing that they've got the distribution platform, which means that they're then going to be definitely, as a result, other filmmakers are going to be cut out of that festival. It is all sorts of wrong. So what happens when people creating work also control the systems that validate and distribute that work? That's where we're at. I don't know where we go through this. I was trying to think of an analogy. I thought of McDonald's, but then I thought, okay, maybe that's a bit tired. And then eventually I thought, well, what about Greggs? Okay, so here we go. Imagine if Greggs were running a competition where independent bakers could pay to enter their sausage rolls, and the winner gets to have their sausage roll sold in Greggs. Greggs decides which sausage roll is good enough. But then the person running the competition says, I've actually never made a sausage roll before, but we've been thinking, can customers submit money so that we can try out developing a sausage roll of our own, and I can make one, and I can really learn the process of making sausage rolls? You'd be like, what? Now, of course, this doesn't quite work, because Greggs do sausage rolls and they're very successful with it. But can you imagine a scenario like this in any other field, in which the people running something were then asking other people to fund them to do it themselves? It'd blow your mind, wouldn't it? It really would. I'm just looking through my notes, seeing if I missed anything. So I discussed the BAFTA BIFA qualifying festivals, which obviously carries weight. I discussed festival selection as currency, of course, because this person's going to be able to be credible with other festivals and other filmmakers moving forward. They're basically creating career opportunities for themselves, having never put their hand in their pocket, as far as I can see, for this film. What else have we got? Oh yeah, let's just touch upon this for a minute. Okay, so just that idea of watching films versus making films. So I've spent hundreds of hours developing my understanding of filmmaking, and I think part of the problem sometimes in education is that you might be teaching alongside people who don't have the same knowledge. And I think where filmmaking becomes difficult to teach is that you get lecturers who they've not all got the same understanding of cinema, and then you're asking them to mark together, and everyone's just using subjective opinion. Okay, I think that's quite good. Well, I don't, based on the things that I've watched. So I think it's really important for courses to have an agreed, shared understanding of what good is, for instance. And that's something I was always keen to find out. Okay, so what is good in terms of cinematography? Not what this festival's saying. So, is there evidence of production value? And let's be right, that's why this person wants £8,000, because they want their first film, to look slick. Because if they're asking other filmmakers to produce slick work, they've got to then do it themselves. But my opinion is, well, okay, if this really is your dream project, over the last 10 years whilst you've been running a festival, why didn't you put £8,000 aside? That's not that much over a 10-year period. In fact, let me just quickly do the maths. Get the phone out again. So over the last 10 years, you've had 3,650 days. So let's divide 8,000 by that. If you put away £2, and I know I sound like the people who say don't go out, buy an avocado toast and a coffee and then you'll be able to afford a mortgage, but if you put away £2.19 every day for the last 10 years, you'd have made this film. And you wouldn't have even had to do it like that, quite frankly. But anyway, where was I? So I think that when I was thinking about what good looks like in terms of cinematography, for instance, you have to have an agreed understanding of, okay, is it a case that it's completely white balanced? Is it always in focus? Is the cinematography intentional? Is it clearly is it aligned with the characters? Is it objective cinematography? Is it subjective cinematography? Do the filmmakers seem to have an idea of how this works? The film I went to watch at the Manchester Film Festival earlier this year, I remember thinking, the filmmakers here don't always know what they're doing, actually, because it was shot as if it was found footage, not found footage, kind of. They were live blogging the whole film. So you see them setting up a camera in a doctor's office to film themselves, but then we have the reverse shot of the doctor, and we cross-cut between two, which implies that the person in the film who's apparently filming these events has set up two cameras, two phones, to shoot a conversation between a doctor and a patient. And straight away I'm sat there going, well, that just doesn't, that's total bollocks. That wouldn't happen. Like, if you were live blogging something, there'd be one camera and they'd just be filming themselves and then turning round to film the doctor, who'd probably say, please don't film me in this environment. I don't give permission for you to use this. And straight away, so I'm thinking, well, that's not intentional cinematography. They've taken something, the idea of using live blogging, live filming as a visual approach, which I appreciate, because they're embracing the limitations, but then they don't follow through on the idea. You should have a scenario in which, okay, we just hold on that person's face getting this diagnosis and we just hear the doctor, because they don't have two cameras to film this meeting. And so I'm thinking, okay, is that good cinematography in that instance? No, because they've not followed through on their own idea. They've tried to cheat the system. And what was interesting was I saw other people discussing this on Letterboxd. And I know I have my own issues with Letterboxd, but I saw people saying the film doesn't have the confidence to follow through on its idea, and they specifically mentioned some of these things. So like there would be shots, for instance, and this person is apparently sick, and they're filming themselves going through this sickness, and we have a bird's eye shot where they've apparently strapped a camera to the roof of their bathroom so they can film themselves being sick. Now that might look good, and I'm sure the Manchester Film Festival going, oh, that's cool, but it's like, that's nonsense. If you're sick, you've got a terminal illness, you're not strapping a camera to a roof to film yourself being sick. You're just not. So questions arise. But anyway, so you develop your taste and your understanding of cinema through years of watching, going through that process of working with actors, managing personalities, making decisions under pressure, fixing mistakes, compromising, knowing what a good film looks like. It requires you to have gone and done one. Now, how does this person know that they're capable of taking the public's £8,000 and doing that? They don't. Producing a film is not the same as directing one. It just isn't. Like, there's a reason why, and I love Miranda to bits, but Miranda can produce a film. But if I said, here's the camera, Miranda, you go and make Notion, she'd come back with something way different than what I've come back with, because she's not gone through that process. She's not had those experiences. The experiences are what make you the director, the person who understands how to make creative decisions under pressure. And I think you should have to go through the process. It's my opinion. Even if you're running a film festival, you shouldn't be able to, in my opinion, think, I don't have to work through those levels that other filmmakers. I don't have to climb the staircase. I'm just going to leapfrog everyone. And because I have a platform, I'm going to ask that platform to fund my dreams. And then, because I control the method of distribution, I'm going to put it in at that platform, and I'm going to say, okay, we had our premiere at the Manchester Film Festival, which is then going to open further doors. It's just not right. So, in terms of stop stressing, stop worrying, no one cares. Yeah, maybe people don't care. Maybe people listen to this and go, oh, shut the fuck up, no one cares. Maybe the festival director goes, I don't care either, I'm going to make the film. And so far, let me just check on Instagram. This has been very loose today. And I'm not going to cut out any of the pauses or ahs, coughs. I mean, sometimes I try and go and do a pass, but it's been a difficult week, really. So I'm just going to put this out as is. So far, let's see. So basically, on the Manchester Film Festival Instagram page, there's a link to the website, and then there's a link to the Kickstarter. And of the £8,000, they're currently sitting at £1,580, and they've had 30 backers. They've got 15 days to go, so they've still got quite a way to go. In terms of the packages that they're offering, 2 people have paid £150 towards it. And that gives you an invitation to a private in-person screening event in Manchester. They've had one backer who wants to be an associate producer who's put in £350. They're yet to have any backers at £500. I mean, people have obviously got money. But I think they're absolutely submitting because here's the thing, right? If you're an indie filmmaker and you think, oh, I'll put a tenner in the back of your mind, I know that some filmmakers will think, well, that kind of, it opens a line of communication with that festival, doesn't it? It means that they might favour my work more favourably. My work might be more favourable to them if they see that I've already helped them out in some way. But this is where that transparency issue comes up, doesn't it? Because it's like, it should be completely separate. If you're going to make a film, it should, my opinion, you shouldn't even play it at your film festival. In the interests of transparency, you should say, I'm making a film, we're doing this thing, we're going to submit it to other festivals, and we're actually not going to discuss made by the director of the Manchester Film Festival at all. we're going to let it be judged on its own terms, I think they'd be less confident. I really do. I think the confidence comes from the fact that they're telling people we have the platform, and that doesn't sit right because you're asking other filmmakers to fund that platform as well. So at what point do you take some accountability for your goals as a filmmaker and take that money out of your own pocket? I don't know. But that's what I'd do. If I was running a festival, I'd want people to think, okay, this is a transparent process, so my film won't be at this film festival. And someone else, I was talking to someone on Instagram and they said, well, they know a filmmaker who runs a festival also around the north, and they did their first screening of a film as a gala screening at their festival, but it wasn't in competition, so it doesn't really count. And it's like, well, it does, because that gala screening, if they were to pay for that out of their own pocket, it like 300, 500 quid. Like when we did a screening of Blurred Lines at home cinema, like we had to put our hands in our pockets. And it's like, instead, they're going, okay, well, it's not part of the official festival. But it's like, well, it is, isn't it? And also, you've got that space because of the submission fees and the sponsorships and all the other things that come along with running a festival. And now you've got a space in which you can put your film on. And you've not really had to sacrifice, well, maybe they have had to sacrifice much, but they've already got the space because they've already got the money from submission fees and they've got the sponsorship fees as well. And when you see the amount of sponsors that were thrown on the programmes and the trailers for Manchester Film Festival, there's an element of like, you should go and ask them for £8,000, quite frankly, because it's not a lot of money. So anyway, to bring this full circle, it's been longer than I thought. I've always thought independent filmmaking is not about waiting. It's about doing. Pick up a camera, make mistakes, learn, make another one. Yeah? We've got a filmmaker, well, they're not actually a director yet, they're a producer. We've got a producer who wants to be a director, but they don't want to go through that process. They also don't want to pay for it. And off the back of seeing the festival they ran, in which platforms were given to super famous people like James McAvoy, Kit Harington, who were the other ones? Was it Angelina Jolie? I forget who else had a film screened at the festival. This hasn't been about independent cinema over large-scale productions. It's been about, there's been a preference at that festival to platform celebrity, high-profile work. So people say, don't worry, don't stress, no one gives a fuck. Well, I don't think that is the case. I think people should give a fuck, and I think independent filmmaking has always been about challenging the system, not accepting it. Like, I wonder what Cassavetes would have to say about what's going on with this. He'd be shocked. There's a guy who he remortgages his house to go and make a film on a much larger budget than £8,000. It really is like Hollywood. Like, say, I don't know, 20th Century Fox or whatever, or Disney, running a crowdfunder and then saying, we're going to put it on Disney Plus. It's outrageous. It's absolutely outrageous. But anyway, people say don't burn bridges, but the fact is, like, I kind of decided where I stood with this festival a few years ago, as I said, when they did 4 or 5 screenings of a Kristen Stewart film. There's no need for a film that was in cinemas 5 weeks later to have 5 screenings at a festival. There just isn't, especially one with big names like Ed Harris. I don't know. So there we go. That's some thoughts for the week. So if people say stop stressing, I would say no. You're probably thinking about something that probably does need addressing. I mean, maybe you are genuinely just stressing. But the things that I tend to have concerns about, whether that be in the world of independent filmmaking or the way film's taught as a subject, it is right to question some of these systems because it's not right. If I think about education, it's not right that class sizes get increased. You're expected to do less granular feedback. You're expected to kind of reduce the amount of contact hours with students. Like, you're shortchanging them. You really are. And this festival is shortchanging its audience because they're saying, we want money for us to run our festival, and we also want money for us to make our dream project. And we're also then, next year, going to ask for money again so that we've got a space to screen this dream project. I just can't imagine being that kind of bold in putting that out to the world. Anyway, so that's all we've got for this week. It's ran 55 minutes. Hopefully this has been interesting. If not, well, there you go. That's all I've got. Thank you. You'll hear from me again next week.